in the next stage of life on Earth, the fish that gave us a backbone, what they do is that some of them use their fins in order to move on to land. And the way that they do this is that they come out of the ocean, um, and they travel from one pond across to another pond. So they don't leave the ocean completely, they just live there. They just pass from place to place, leaving the ocean for a small amount of time. And so the fins then become the feet of a new kind of animal called an amphibian, an animal that lives partly in the ocean and partly in the water and partly on land. But that's not a fish. And this is what the world looked like back then. It was a big swamp. But these amphibians, the key, what stood off, something, what property what that they had was that they had to still go back into the ocean to lay their eggs. So they were still reliant on the water. So they still had to go back. So they weren't completely free of the ocean yet. And so we still have some examples of these kind of similar animals today. So this is actually a fish. This is called a mud skipper, but it's a fish that travels from pond to pond, and it can stay on land for a little bit, but then it has to go back into the ocean. So the next step then is an organism that actually lays eggs, but the eggs, they don't need to lay their eggs in the ocean or in the water. And the way that they're able to do that is that they lay eggs, and the eggs have a hard shell with the liquid on the inside. So the organisms that do that are reptiles. So reptiles become the first fully land-based animals. They didn't have to go back into the water to lay their eggs. And what allows them to become fully land-based is that they laid shell-covered eggs. And inside the egg, inside the shell, was the water that kept the baby safe, the embryo safe. So this allowed for the eggs to be laid on land. Also, reptiles develop air-breathing lungs. And they also develop waterproof skin that kept the water in their bodies. So now these animals were free to roam across the land and didn't have to go back into the ocean. So these become the first reptiles. So the amphibians, they were half in the water and half in the ocean. They had to go back into the water to lay their eggs. But then reptiles become the first organisms that lay eggs purely on land because the eggs had a hard shell, and they also had a waterproof skin. So something else occurs in this time period is that Pangea forms. So the Pangea forms in the late Paleozoic. So Pangea forms in the late Paleozoic. So, like again, like before and again, now 240 million years ago, we have another mass extinction. And here, 70% of land vertebrates and 90% of marine organisms go extinct. And this is the largest mass extinction in Earth's history. So, this is a well-known one called the Permian mass extinction. And we believe that the cause of this extinction was volcanic eruptions that lasted for 1 million years in Siberia. And this released large amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that caused the global warming, killing off the largest proportion of organisms or life on the surface of the earth. But not all life dies. The animals that make it through, for example here, evolve into the next stage of life on earth, which are going to be the dinosaurs. So this brings up the next period in Earth's history. This is called the Mesozoic. So the Mesozoic, or middle life, this becomes the age of the dinosaurs. So the few reptiles that made it through the worst mass extinction, what happens is that after the land recovers, what these animals inherit is a huge amount of land with no occupants. So they're free to evolve as they want to, or get as much food as they want to, and they become a new species. And this new species are the dinosaurs. So these dinosaurs take over the land. So for example, Tyrannosaurus Rex, they also take over the ocean, or they also go back into the ocean. So this is a dinosaur or reptile that looks like a dolphin because it swam in the ocean. So this is the most, I guess you can say, convenient shape if you want to swim in the ocean. So the survivors, they expand. And something else that occurs is that before, I showed you this a little while ago, but the world looked like a swamp previously. But something new happens with the trees as well. So you get the emergence of pine trees in this time period. But something else occurs is not only did dinosaurs come into existence, the first mammals did as well. So our ancestors existed alongside the dinosaurs, but they tended to be nocturnal and small, and just living in the shadows. So something else happens during the Mesozoic when the dinosaurs come around is that Pangea begins to break apart. So Pangea breaks up during the Mesozoic. And if you notice here, the first crocodiles come into existence as well. So sharks are the oldest, you can say they're some of the oldest creatures on the surface of the earth, and the next oldest are crocodiles. They haven't changed much since that period. So not only did dinosaurs expand over land and in the ocean, but they also took to the air. So you have your first flying creatures, these pterosaurs here. So these are flying lizards. But along with these flying lizards, you have raptors, like, for example, velociraptors, in some ways related to Tyrannosaurus Rex. They start to develop feathers, and eventually they become birds. So the key thing to watch out for is that birds evolved from dinosaurs, but birds did not evolve from these pterosaurs. This is a different line of evolution here. Birds actually evolved from raptors. So just a simplified way of saying it then is that the first birds evolved from dinosaurs in this period. And so you can see here, you have this animal. You can see feathers, so it's like a bird, but this animal has claws, not like a bird. So it's a half dinosaur, half bird, so a transition. And you can see what it looked like here.